Please be upstanding for the Chair of Council. Thank you. Please be seated. Can I take this opportunity to welcome members of the Council and the officers who've been invited to come along to hear youth councillors debate topics raised by the young people of North Tyneside. Apologies have been received from the youth councillor Aaron Spears. Is there any others? No. And I would like to invite the young mayor, Oscar Daniel, to make some introductory remarks. Thank you, Oscar.
This is the fourth year that we've held the Youth Council annual debate. The topics being debated today are based upon the issues raised by over 200 young people who took part in National Citizenship Service Youth Democracy Session. Today we are concerned about what we as a Youth Council should take forward as a North Tyneside priority for 2018. The three topics that we are debating this evening are: from an early age, young people should be educated about politics and know their rights to have a say and a voice in their community. Number two is that more should be done by the media to ensure that there is no gender bias in the reporting of issues. And number three is first aid being taught in schools can save lives, therefore it should be compulsory. A vote will be taken at the end of the debate, which will determine which one of the three topics will be taken forward as the Youth Council's campaign for 2018. I would like to thank the Chair of the Council, Councillor Kath Davies, for agreeing to chair our debate. Before we move on to the debate, I will update everyone about the progress of the last year's campaign. We had some excellent debates last year. But the most convincing and the one that received the most votes was better healthy relationships for all relationships. Because the topic fell into the theme of health, it had been the Young People's Health and Wellbeing Working Group who had since taken the lead, which I'm a member of. Since last year, we've been busy with our campaign. The Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, Abby Armstrong, has taken a lead on this and dedicated time during her meetings to focus on the topic. We started by meeting with a school improvement officer. We told her about the campaign and she updated us on what has been happening with PSHCE lessons to make them more inclusive. We then looked through local school sex and relationship education policies to see if they mentioned being inclusive. We did a survey with the Youth Council around their experience of sex and relationship education. We found that it was different depending on their school. Some members of the group attended a Equality for Us conference in London, organised by the British Youth Council. This was to help us understand the campaign on a national level. Since attending the conference, we've started to write the recommendations for PSHCE leads, which we hope to share with them soon. During this time, the British Youth Council have also released a campaign called PSHE for Me. They want PSHE to cover all that young people need to actively participate in life. We want to know about finances, relationships and sex, the political system, cultural awareness and the community cohesion, sustainable living and citizenship. This will also encourage lessons to be more inclusive for all young people.
Thank you, Oscar, for your opening remarks and the update. Thank you. The outcome of our vote at the end of the debate authorises the young mayor and the youth councillors to work with officers to achieve change for young residents in the borough. Can I now invite Joe Murray to start today's quick debate? He will propose that from an early age, young people should be educated about politics and know their rights to have their say and their voice in the community. opposing view will be Naomi Hughes. Naomi Hughes? Right, after Joe spoke, sorry. So can we have Joe, please? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Politics is one of the most important subjects. This is because it affects everything from the common decisions of a group of people, and why they made that decision, to the importance of government and the laws we must obey. My main reason for wanting the Youth Council to take forward this campaign is that politics affects everything in the country. Therefore, all students must receive an education on this pressing matter. Furthermore, the party that wins the most seats can affect all the topics in today's debate. So voting for this could be a vote in the long run for all these topics. Nonetheless, many political scientists have said we don't live in a democracy if we allow our voting habits to be changed by media representation and deception. Another point is political socialization, which is how you develop your political views. Personally, I believe all students must have an unbiased education of politics to allow them to vote for someone not because of their personality or the way they are portrayed in the media, but their policies, their political and social beliefs, and their manifesto. Politics opens many doors, as politics allows the population to engage in conversations they were never able to engage in. It gives students a new way of thinking by giving them analytical skills which will help them in their future jobs. It allows us to question the legitimacy of the world we live in, and most of all, gives us knowledge to develop our country with the electoral process by showing us the importance of voting. Also, did you know the English curriculum for citizenship already wants students to think critically and debate political questions? Politics would do exactly this and enrich our minds with questions of society and how humanity functions. Not to mention, young people should at least know how to contact their MP or local councillors. Most importantly, if we are taught politics, it allows us to prove to the government that 16 and 17-year-olds have the knowledge to place a vote. This would benefit all of us due to the fact it gives us the chance to prove younger generations can place a well-thought-out vote and want to. Some say if young people were given the vote at 16, we wouldn't vote. However, in a recent bill passed in Scotland to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in referendums, the results were truly astonishing, where 75% of 16 and 17-year-olds voted, making a remarkable impact on the results. The lack of political education is shown in the following quotes. Is Donald Trump our president, and does Jeremy Corbyn want to be president? These are questions I have personally heard and shows the lack of basic political understanding. This proves that students don't get enough, if any, at all political education. Some people may say students shouldn't be forced to learn politics because it's boring. Firstly, politics doesn't have to be boring. It's a study of society and our thoughts, not to mention the relevance of the subject. Also, even if students did find it boring, students throughout their school life will not enjoy some subjects. Why shouldn't young people learn about the country they live in and have the knowledge to vote independently? My proposal for this campaign is that we closely link it to the UK Youth Parliament's curriculum for life, which includes subjects such as finance, job applications and politics. This would give the campaign national recognition, which would be extremely beneficial to North Tyneside young people's voices. Furthermore, with this campaign on national level, it would help in providing schools with teachers qualified in subjects relevant to politics to give students an unbiased political education. Thank you for listening, and I hope you make the right choice.
Thank you, Joe. And now can I introduce names to put to the side of the argument? Thank you. Is it? Niamh. Sorry. Sorry, Niamh.
Thank you, Joe. Today I'm talking to you all about why I think that the issue of students not having political education should most certainly not be the topic that we will campaign and take forward in the next year of Youth Council. Generally, I do believe that politics are highly important for young people to know about and is an important issue, just like the other topics being debated today. However, I believe that politics are not something to be taught in schools and that there are far more urgent and important issues being argued here today. I believe that politics and involvement in our democracy is a choice that we are given, and so we should have the right to participate, or in this case, not participate in our government's politics. If young people want to educate themselves, they can research independently on their phones, tablets, laptops and computers. The country is filled with resources where young people can access umpteen amounts of information at their fingertips. I understand why politics is important to know about, but the negatives simply outweigh the positives of this proposed education. Bias, tension and lying versus the impressionable teenagers of our region. Does that sound like a good education to you? To start off, the main reason why I completely disagree with compulsory political education in school is because of bias. Bias from the government who will make the curriculum and bias from the teachers who will teach it. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there will be a bias and unfairness in the way that this curriculum will be taught. If teachers have a political point of view, then there will always be a chance that those teachers will teach this curriculum in an unfair manner. I understand that there can also be a strong influence in the young people's homes from their parents too, but high schools are a place for young people to escape home life and thrive. It is a place where their personalities come alive, as well as them developing a lot of opinions, as you may already know. Therefore, I believe it would be unjust to strip them of the opportunity to develop their own political views and understandings independently without the sway and pressure of other people. Allow them to form an opinion based on unbiased news sources, rather than being forced into a box of conformity caused by the pressure of others. This brings me on to my next point. Teasing, tyrannising and tormenting. You get the idea. People can be cruel, can't they? Others must know that there are a lot of influential figures with very controversial beliefs that are known to get lots and lots of criticism. People such as Donald Trump, Jeremy Corbyn, Vladimir Putin, Nigel Farage, and even our own Prime Minister, Theresa May, is thought to be a contentious figure. Assuming that debating and talking about politics is part of the proposed curriculum, can you imagine how an out-of-the-box thinking teenager must feel in a class full of students who think the other way? If that was me, I would feel scared to voice an opinion. What about you? This isn't even including the inevitable backlash of an unpopular opinion being voiced in a class full of students. They could be tormented and made to think that they are wrong. This shouldn't ever happen to anyone. We live in a country where we have the freedom of speech and where we strive for equality. So why on earth would you put in place a possibly argument-provoking curriculum in classes full of hormonal and possibly argumentative teenagers when they themselves are going through a critical stage in their life? Let them explore politics outside of the classroom where they can form opinions based on themselves and only themselves. Obviously, I would love to stand here today and say that all young people are interested in politics, but this is simply not the case. I have to state the obvious. The matter of fact is that a lot of teenagers just simply aren't interested. A recent survey said that a mere 31% of 16 to 24-year-olds were interested in politics, leaving a massive 69% of 16 to 24-year-olds not interested or not bothered about politics. If this is the case, then why make teenagers learn about this topic when a lot of them don't really care? Should they not be focusing on other education or doing homework or coursework in order to get good results, instead of spending an hour or more on a topic that won't get them a GCSE or an A-level? To conclude, I personally believe that young people should have the choice to participate in politics. Even this year, the young people of our country proved that they can account for themselves. In Theresa May's unexpectedly called election this year, for the public to decide who takes us through to the uncertain Brexit talks, the 18 to 24-year-olds voting turnout surged a massive 16%. These people are people who did not receive political education in school, proving that we simply do not need this topic. When the younger generations want to vote in an important election, they do the research and independently account for themselves in our democracy. It is, after all, their choice.
Thank you for that, Neil. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. Right, can I invite questions or statements from other members of the Youth Council? Sorry, can I see? I can't see your name there. Is it Bethany? Yeah. Bethany.
Just this is to both of you, but neither of you are referring to high school age, but then Joey didn't refer to an age. I want to know, because on there it says an early age, I want to know what both of you think a year group or what age you think this education should start if it did happen.
Yeah, I would probably say...
Can you just put your microphone on? Sorry.
I'd probably say from maybe year 5 at the earliest, because that's when people are developing their own opinions, or maybe year 6, because that's when puberty starts to hit and people start developing their own views.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Do you want to respond, Neve?
I personally would disagree. I would say that education about politics should start possibly the start of GCSEs. So sort of year 10, beginning of year 11, when the young students are beginning to develop a sense of responsibility and when they can actually take responsibility for their own opinions.
Thank you. Is that okay? Sorry, I can't see your name. Is it well, we've got studio, so yes. Alicia, is it Abby? And then we've got two Abbies next to each other. I'll have Abby 1.
Right, this is a question to Neve. You did say that you didn't want political education to get in the way of things like GCSE and coursework when you wouldn't get a GCSE out of it. But by saying you wanted it to start at GCSE age, is that not cramming it in so that all the education has to be done when GCSEs are being done? Whereas Joe's view is much better because it means that not all the education has to be crammed in initially and it's not going to affect GCSEs as much.
I completely understand where you're coming from, but obviously already, yeah, 10s and 11s already receive compulsory PSE. So if this proposed education was going to be involved with the curriculum for life, then obviously there would already be an hour slot each week put aside for each student to be learning about it. That's my response.
Do you want another question there, Abby?
It was just a comment from there.
All right, supplementary question, okay.
But don't you think that maybe that would be better suited to, say, for example, year 7 for schools, wherever their PSE starts? So as soon as the high school starts, for example, year 7 or year 9, do you not think that would be better suited because they have PSE as well and it's not cramming it into GCSEs?
From my own personal experience, when I was in year 7, no one could even handle the topic of puberty, never mind serious government politics. That's why I would say that if this education was actually put in place, then it would be put in place in a already put aside time slot for students, and not, like, I don't think it should be for year 7s because I don't think that it would be taken seriously at all.
And this is for Neve as well. So I know you mentioned on how people can get involved in politics outside of schools rather than it being compulsory in schools, but like you didn't say how we can get people to do that and how we can advise them. So would you be thinking through the media, or like how are you thinking of doing it?
Firstly, you're sitting in a room where students are getting involved in politics. You can obviously get involved outside of youth council. If you want to join, I think it's from the age of 15, you can join any political party, sign up online and get involved and get their emails sent to you. So I think there's many different ways that you can get involved in politics from, like, without having a political education.
Okay. Next, can we have Libby? Libby, your question?
This is a question for Joe. Quite early on in your debate, you talked about how you believe that political education is a life skill, and then further on, you talked about Curriculum for Life, which is the British Youth Council's annual campaign for last year. So instead of campaigning on it by itself, do you not think we should convince British Youth Council to include it in the Curriculum for Life?
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be extremely beneficial to North Tyneside young people and help represent them. But I also think it would be good to promote politics in PSC, which is what I do at my school. I don't know what school at yours. But yeah, I think it would be beneficial.
Next, we have William.
This is for Joe. I'm just wondering, you say if politics came into the curriculum, would this be taught in PSHE? And if so, would it be taught every week? Because there's other things that we like talk about in PSHE.
Obviously, I do understand some people will find politics boring. So I do think if we're going to do it in PSD or PSHE lessons, I don't think we should do it every lesson, because I think students would lose focus with it the subject.
Okay. Next, we have Hannah.
Just a question for Neve, and talking about biased opinions of teachers. And how it would be taught. But if students were left to their own devices to have an interest in politics, there's a danger of looking in the media and having a biased opinion through the media. So yeah.
Obviously, I completely agree with that point of view, but obviously the same risk applies inside the classroom. You're going to have you're going to have loads of different students, loads of your friends might form political opinions, and that might try and influence you to also form those opinions. I know personally in my school, there's been a lot of tension between people who represent, like people our age who would represent the Conservative Party. They've been given a lot of backlash for it because obviously a lot of the younger generation appear to support Labour at the moment and Jeremy Corbyn, so obviously there might be a little bit of, I think there's obviously going to be bias in whatever area you're going to be taught in.
Can I invite our young Mayor, Oscar, to make a comment?
It's just a question for you, Niamh. I was just wondering whether you thought if an hour a week was enough for this topic, with all the other topics such as SRE, and some schools use this as revision time in years 10 and 11, like you were saying when you wanted it to be. So yeah, do you think it'll get the time it needed for this huge subject?
Well, obviously for starters, I completely disagree with this education being put in place, but I personally, in my school, there's a lot of different, there's like obviously you have 5 periods in school, and there's a 6th period on every single day for study periods for year 10s and 11s. That was the case for my GCSE, so I personally don't believe that it would affect, I don't personally believe that it would affect the GCSEs of the students.
Yeah, I was just also wondering, but do you think with all the other things such as SRE and drugs and alcohol, do you think there's everything in PSE?
Well, I mean, I don't think that this education should be put forward. I think that topics such as drugs and alcohol and relationships should be prioritised. I don't think that it would get the time. If it was put in that particular time slot, it probably wouldn't get the time. That's why I don't think it should be in place for starters. I think young people have the opportunity outside of school.
Got 3 more questions, all right? And I've got Abby 1, Abby and the 2 Abbys and Bethan. Okay, so I'll take your question first, Abby.
I know you've just mentioned how politics isn't really relevant, but do you not think that it's important for young people to know what their future looks like and what goes on in the country, so they have a great understanding of what goes on in politics so that they can have their say too?
I do believe that, but like I said in my argument, I think that young people have the opportunity outside of school as well as inside. They have access to computers, whether it be in school, at public libraries. They've got the newspapers, whether they choose to get them or not. And there's so many different ways of a young person to learn about politics. I don't think that it should just be restricted to a student learning about our government's politics in school.
Abby?
Just another question for me, sorry. You did mention about how you can join a political party from age 15, you're saying. Many young people wouldn't actually know this was the case, and we're part of the small minority who do here. So if people can get involved, then shouldn't we be educating them how to get involved? Because admittedly, young people are quite lazy and chances are won't educate themselves, even if they are interested. And if they want to get involved, surely we should at least be telling them how to get involved in politics outside of school if you don't want to teach it. But by completely cutting political education, we're not even helping them learn how to get involved.
I don't know if this is the case in all schools, but I know in my school there is a set thing for every single registration in the morning that the class should go through a news article, whether it be about government politics or like day-to-day general things about the local area. So I do, but I personally have been taught where to find other news sources or other places that I can get involved in politics in.
And finally, Bethan.
This is Jo. You said that some people might find politics boring. Bad education and if the education is bad in this area, and if students are finding it boring, they're not going to get involved later on in life, which is what my thought is, that if the education right now is what we found it in some sort of, if it is in a PSHE lesson, teachers aren't fully prepared for this kind of thing, and they're not fully taught themselves about this kind of thing, so teachers are already going to have a biased opinion about which political party they would prefer. So if students would find the topic boring, then later on in life they won't have the effort to put in to teach themselves it. So just...
Firstly, I don't think politics has to be boring. Like, I don't find it boring. It doesn't have to be about the Houses of Commons and the Houses of Lords. Politics is about the study of our mind and why we make decisions and how society functions, very similar to sociology. I think that... sorry, can you repeat your point again? I forgot.
Basically, you said that you think that some students would find it boring, but I'm thinking, is there any way that you think you would tackle students find it boring if the teachers aren't going to be fully educated about it?
I think they could possibly, teachers could get a course and then find out how to make the subject more interesting for a younger audience and how to involve them, maybe through like tasks, games and stuff like that, to make politics not the average politician in the Commons, but more enthusiastic and like encouraging.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Joe, and thank you, Neve. That was a really interesting debate, and that was great how everyone got engaged with that one. Thank you. Next, I'm going to invite Sophie Anson to continue today's debate by proposing that more should be done by the media to ensure that there is no gender bias in the reporting of issues. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Chair. In the 21st century, the media has become the most significant means of communication, and therefore it is integral that we ensure it promotes gender equality rather than reinforces existing gender stereotypes. Yes, a lot has been done in recent years to prevent the objectification of women, but this is just one of the issues involved, and we are still far from there being a fair gender portrayal within our media. Within our news, women are less likely to be described as an expert or spokesperson, and female journalists are more likely to be ascribed soft subjects such as family, lifestyle or fashion, whilst hard news such as politics and the economy is more likely to be covered by men. In films and TV, women are still conventionally seen as housewives or simply in working situations that extend the domestic role, such as nurses, carers or office workers. More may have been done to make sure that women are no longer presented purely as objects of male sexual desire, but there is still a shocking absence of female leaders, even female workers within our media. Research has shown that 80.5% of all working women in the media are male. This is compared to reality in which 50% of our workers are female. Even among the top-grossing G-rated family films, girl characters are outnumbered by boys at a ratio of 3:1. This is the same ratio that has existed since the end of World War II. For decades, male characters have dominated nearly 3/4 of speaking parts in children's entertainment, and 83% of film and TV narrators are male. Yet, this is not just a female issue. Men are also subjected to stereotyping in the media, typically characterised as powerful, dominant and strong. As representatives of young people in our borough, I believe this is of great concern to our Youth Council. For young audiences who absorb ideas from the media on how to behave and what to become, these characterisations can lead to false assumptions and harmful conclusions. They lead to unrealistic body ideals in very young children, cementing and reinforcing negative body images during their formative years. According to the 2017 Common Sense Media Report, these stereotypes become so ingrained it can ultimately affect young people's career choices, self-worth, relationships, and ability to achieve their full potential. I therefore ask you all to carefully consider that this be a worthwhile campaign for the Youth Council in 2018 and urge you all to vote for this topic at the end of the debate.
Thank you, Sophie. I'd like now to introduce Abby Armstrong, who's going to have an opposing view. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. I'm going to be talking to you all about why I don't think this issue should be the issue we campaign on the next year as a Youth Council. I'm not going to stand here and try and convince you that gender equality in the media is not an important issue, because quite frankly I do believe that the three issues that were selected to be debated today are all important issues in the UK. However, although I do believe it is important, I don't think it is the most important issue out of these three. One of the main reasons I strongly believe that this is not the most pressing issue of the three being debated today is that gender bias is already recognised as an important problem in our society, and for that reason progress is already being made. A clear example of the work being done is that the UK is now planning to ban advertisements in the media that reinforce harmful or negative gender roles and stereotypes. The Advertising Standards Authority is extending their revoke on images they don't want to see portrayed in the media, which for example shows women being objectified and unhealthily thin portrayals of women. The Committee of Advertising Practice is using this information in order to create a new and updated set of standards that is due to come into place in the year 2018. This will include things like single fathers struggling to efficiently care for their children, or mothers stuck in the kitchen and cleaning up after their family. An example of how women are being represented more in the media now is that through a survey conducted in 2016 of 700 professionals by City University London, 65% of the journalists who have joined the journalism profession over the previous 3 years of that had been female. This is an example of how many more women are being represented in the media in comparison to previous years, and how their equal presence in our society is slowly starting to become more accepted. Another step in the right direction is the fact that women are starting to be represented in sports reporting and media more often than before. For Sky Sports News, a broadcaster confirmed that 30% of the production team are made up of females. Although this may sound like a low statistic, it must be considered that sport used to stereotypically be the hobby or career of men. For this reason, this is a major improvement. A spokesman also quoted the following to confirm this. "It would be disrespectful to those women if we didn't challenge the idea that they are there for any reason other than merit." A Sky Sports News anchor, Natalie Sawyer, quoted in 2013, "I've been here for over 10 years, joining as a runner before moving on to presenting. And Sky has always given me the support and training opportunities for professional development. This is proof from women themselves that they are starting to feel more represented and respected within job roles in the media." One thing we must seriously consider today before voting is the amount of work involved in each potential campaign. I'd like everyone in this room to think to themselves now, what could we do as a youth council in order to ensure no gender bias in the media? I can't imagine that many of us here could think of a way to efficiently implement this into North Tyneside. Gender bias is a widespread UK issue, and there are other ways we could get involved with supporting this, without basing our campaign for the next year on an issue which in my view is simply impossible for us all to solve. A perfect example of this is the This Girl Can campaign, which is a campaign funded by the National Lottery and developed by Sport England that helps women to overcome fears of judgment and take part in physical activity that makes them happy. Since this is already an existing campaign that is well developed and well known among lots of people, whilst also offering ways to register as a supporter and help promote the work the campaign does, this may be a way of helping to break these unfair gender stereotypes in North Tyneside, while still basing our main campaign on something that we are more likely to achieve as a youth council. As I mentioned before, as much as I do believe that this is an important issue, I do honestly think that the other issues are more urgent and unseen by our young people. Firstly, I believe that First Aid would be a much more beneficial campaign to take forward as a youth council, since as we can easily say, this could save lives. However, this may be a hefty campaign for the youth council to take on, and since I know the youth council's health and wellbeing group feels they should start to focus more on physical health than they have done in the past, work on First Aid may come into the youth council anyways without this being the campaign. My main passion for the next youth council campaign, however, would definitely be to support political education, which Joe has already discussed with everyone. This is especially because of the British Youth Council campaign of Vote at 16, a campaign trying to persuade the government to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in elections and referendums in Britain. 1.5 million young people are currently denied the vote, which is a huge number of people not being permitted to have their voices heard, on a political and life-changing level. As has been mentioned, the Scottish Government passed the Scottish Election Bill that allows 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in all referendums as of May 2016. The main argument with the political education topic is that people may not bother to get involved. However, as Joe has said, 75% of these young people voted in the first Scottish referendum that they were allowed to, which proves that this is not the case. Since Vote at 16 is a campaign that is talked about frequently, it's something that could definitely happen in the future, and is also something some political parties are already in favour of. I believe that political education is vital, so that young people can vote knowing their rights and knowing what they're voting for, rather than voting based on funny memes on social media or whatever their peers are voting for. How can we expect young people to vote for issues that seriously affect our futures when they don't even have a basic knowledge of politics? As Joe has mentioned, I'm sure we've all heard some astonishing remarks made from young people about our political environment. Personally, it does worry me, and I don't know about the rest of the people here, a surprising amount of young people believe that Theresa May is a shampoo brand. To conclude, I don't personally believe that gender bias in the media is the most important issue for us to take forward. As it could be unachievable for our youth council, it is already recognised as an important issue and therefore is being worked on as we speak right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Right, can I invite questions or statements from the members of the Youth Council? We got Libby.
Yes, this is a question for Abby. One of your examples was about Baseball Can as being a sports organisation that helps promote girls in sport. But what's that got to do with the media?
This Girl Can has been represented in the media lots of times, and it has media stars who have been representing it before, and I do think it would be more beneficial to sign up to something that already exists, that's already well known, rather than starting something from scratch that we're expected to make a lot of work on it happen in a year. I do think that's a very unachievable thing for the Youth Council, and obviously that's just one example. There's lots of different things that could be used for that we could join on something that's already created, and that could have a much bigger impact than trying to do something as a Youth Council in a year.
Did you have a supplementary there, maybe? Hannah. So was it Hannah? Have I got Hannah? No, it's not Hannah, it's somebody. I can't see. Rebecca. Sorry, Rebecca.
This is a question for Sophie. The media wants to appeal to most people, and the most common and typical family, as we can sort of all agree, there is different families, but is that the woman is the housewife. So they play it as most people can relate to, and that's why there's a lot of gender bias. Do you not think this plays into a lot of the media's stereotypes on women?
I think the statistics that I addressed before show that it's not actually reflective. You say that most women are housewives, but that's simply not true of our society anymore. 50% of women are now working, and the representation of working characters in our media is 80.5% male. That simply doesn't reflect our society and certainly what our society is progressing into.
Is it Abby? Abby, yes, Abby.
This is for Sophie. I just wanted to check, do you think that this is really achievable to do? So can we stop gender bias in the media? What are your ideas on what we could do?
I think it's definitely achievable for us as a Youth Council to reduce it, certainly more achievable than overriding the national curriculum to improve politics or first aid. That's simply a lot more of an aim. I think we can work with local media organisations to make sure that they're representative. We've got local news, the council's media especially, that we can work very closely with. We can start initiatives for young people to get more women involved in producing and directing, in which women now only represent 7% of directors and 20% of producers. So there is definitely a lot we could do, which to my opinion is more achievable than potentially trying to influence the national curriculum.
Did you have a question, Becky?
Yeah. It was just, you said something about 63% of something on your speech. Where did you get that from? 65%.
So they conducted in 2016 by City University London, which was 7 professionals.
Okay, thank you.
Joe?
As Abby said, there's been loads of stuff being done towards gender equality. Also, more female MPs were in Parliament than ever in the recent election. So change is happening, and therefore it will impact media representation. So why is your topic so important if change is already happening slowly but steadily?
Change is happening because we're doing something about it and taking the approach that this change is happening, so let's leave it now, will only lead to them progressing backwards. We need to jump on this while it's moving to make sure that it gets to a point where it is truly representative. So we use the example of female MPs. Yes, there are more female MPs now, but it's still not representative society. We might be progressing, but we're not there yet. So we shouldn't jump on off the train whilst it's quick enough. We should help it get to its final destination.
Young man, Oscar?
Question for Abby. So would you say it would be good to work on gender bias this year in the Youth Council, possibly working with This Girl Can, as you've talked about? just not as a priority. So would you say it's good to have it running in the background?
I definitely do think it's a very important issue. As I said, all three issues today are extremely important. I do think there should be some work done on all of them. I just don't think as a campaign for the year, it's going to be something that we can achieve as a youth council in a year. And I do believe that we should be doing work on it because gender bias and gender equality are such huge issues in the media and day-to-day life. I do think there should definitely be work on it, but I think as a main campaign, it would take longer than a year. And obviously next year when we have the annual debate, a new topic will be picked and that will become the focus, and eventually it's going to get forgotten about. So if it's just the main campaign, there's lots of other work we could be doing that should be taking priority when we can still be doing this in other working groups and as a council without it being the main campaign.
William?
This is a question for Sophie. Do you think we should start something new on this front, or just like support something that's already going on, like Abby said, This Girl Can?
I think to respond to that and what Abby's just said as well, starting something new, having this as a priority, the other issues, politics, we're here now representing that education about youth politics, that's what we do as a youth council. First aid, as Abby actually addressed in her speech, will come into our already health and wellbeing group and work by doing our physical education there. Having this as a priority for our youth council means that it's, first of all, introducing it. I can't see any area now where we could work this into without it being a priority itself compared to the other two issues where we already cover them quite a bit.
It's Amy Heron, yes. Abby, sorry.
This is for Sophie again. So you say it's achievable, but like Abby said, do you think it's something that we can do within just one single year, or is it something gradual which will take a lot of time to do?
Obviously it's a national issue, just as the other two issues we're talking about here are, but focusing on it locally, there's certainly a lot that we could do in a year. As I said before, working with local organisations, it would probably take a lot less paperwork, a lot less meetings than it would to initiate a whole new programme of education into a school, just to work with people in the media and ask them, what are you doing for this, what can we do to help this. I think that is a lot more achievable than working with schools and the education system would be.
And finally, me.
Okay, so it's a question for both of you, and both of you, under this topic, talk about how you would like to break gender stereotypes in the media, but yet you are only talking about women. What about the portrayal of masculinity in the media and how men are portrayed as being very, very masculine, but when in reality it's obviously a completely different situation?
Just in response to that, I did actually mention in my speech as things are going on with advertising and how we're trying to revoke images in adverts that are enforcing these negative stereotypes. That it also includes men not being able to care for the family, which is obviously one of the issues you're kind of coming into, because women are always seen as people who care for the family. So stuff like these stereotypes all comes in to things that are already being done. So it's not just women. There's things going on for both of them, as I mentioned at the start.
Thank you, Abby. Did you want to respond as well, Sylvia?
I also mentioned briefly in my speech that any approach we did take to this would have to be very inclusive of both men and women. And I think certainly the body image select committee that Oscar took part on with the British Youth Council is a good springboard for us to go into that and address that quite fairly and openly.
Thank you, Abby and Sophie. I'd just like to mention actually that North Tyneside happens to be in the minority by having a female mayor and a female chair. Okay. Anyway, thank you both for that. It was very good. Thank you. Now can I invite Libby Doughty to propose a view that first aid being taught in schools can save lives, therefore it should be compulsory. And Abby Heron will propose this view.
Thank you, Chair. I will be debating why we need to introduce first aid education into schools. To start off with, some statistics from St John's Ambulance. As shocking as they may seem, they are all true. As many as 77% of people don't know how to administer CPR, And even more concerning is that 25% of people are unaware what CPR actually is. 59% of UK citizens don't know how to treat a nosebleed, and 57% would not know what to do if someone fainted. However, the most shocking statistic that I found in my research for this debate today was that 12 out of 13 people would not know how to save a life. So I ask you today, the youth counsellors, how many of you would know how to save a life? Or even if a loved one was in great pain or seriously injured, how many of you would be able to help? Well, you could argue that's why we have the emergency services, right? In theory, yes, but it doesn't always work that way. If someone collapsed in the street and you were to call an ambulance, it would take on average 8 minutes to arrive. According to the St John's Ambulance website, in that time, if a person was suffering 1 out of 5 common conditions, such as heart attack or stroke, in that 8 minutes they could be dead. In these circumstances, this outcome could be prevented by someone administering basic first aid knowledge. It's not that people do not understand its importance. 98% of people recognise that basic first aid skills saves lives, but few people learn them. By teaching young people first aid, we are giving them the capability to act and make a difference when it really matters. First aid education is not expensive. St John's Ambulance is one of the many organisations that produces free teaching material specifically aimed at young people. Furthermore, first aid learning does not just cover physical emergencies, but also tackles mental health-based problems, such as if someone witnesses an accident. This learning could be easily inputted into PSA lessons. Implementing this would go some way to address the fact that 12 out of 13 people would not know how to save a life. It is easy to assume that you don't need to learn first aid because it will never happen to you. However, the fact is you never know. Whether it be to help your mum, dad, sister or brother, or even a stranger in the street who finds themselves in trouble, would you not rather be aware and prepared than a helpless bystander? It is all well and good of acknowledging the value of first aid after the event, but it could be too late by then. I'm sure then you'd wish you'd been taught it in schools. I'm not suggesting a complex, in-depth learning programme, but just a provision of basic knowledge of action to take in serious situations. North Tyneside is one of the country's top providers of education, so I have every confidence that they will deliver it well within schools. Then every young person having equal access to this learning. Finally, I would like to refer to the St John's Ambulance 2016 campaign that showed a cancer survivor attending a family barbecue only to die by choking on a piece of food. After all that he had survived, no one in attendance that day could know how to save him. How ironic is that? This is not just an advert looking to shock us out of inertia. The fact is that annually as many people die from incidents that could be easily prevented, such as choking, as those who die from cancer. So I ask the young people here today, why do you not want to learn how to save a life? Let's not be one out of 12 or 13 people and create a new generation of lifesavers.
Thank you for that, Libby. Can I? And now can I introduce Abby Heron to come up and have the opposing argument? Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Livy, for that. So now I'll be debating against compulsory first aid education in all schools. Firstly, Libby's point strongly showed that first aid should be compulsory in schools because it could possibly prevent deaths. But at the moment, most school children are unsure of how to perform first aid because they are either uncomfortable doing so or aren't educated on it. A survey carried out by St John's Ambulance in 2011 statistically showed that 7 in 10 school children in the UK would feel uncomfortable or under pressure if asked to perform first aid. Even by educating children on how to perform first aid, if they were ever put in a situation where they had to save a person's life, perhaps they would be overwhelmed by the pressure put on them and forget what steps they have to do to prevent the situation from worsening. We here at North Tyneside Council must stop and think, is this achievable? Is this going to work? We are relying on schools in North Tyneside to educate our young people on first aid. But have we considered the fact that schools all have their own ways of teaching young people, and they will have very different priorities to each other? Schools in North Tyneside already have a really full curriculum. Therefore, by introducing another item that is simply just unnecessary would mean you'd have to remove another important lesson to make room for it on the timetable. Rather than introducing compulsory first aid in schools, we could perhaps advise children to join extracurricular activities and youth groups outside of schools, such as Scouts, Guides, and Duke of Edinburgh Awards, where they could learn first aid within these groups. This supports my point from earlier because by attending extracurricular activities outside of school, it means that it is voluntary rather than compulsory, so it is optional, meaning children would feel more comfortable learning first aid if they have chosen to do it, rather than being forced to do it during school time. We are still young people who may feel uncomfortable in certain situations. Therefore, should have the option whether we want to learn it or not. Even if we are all fully educated in first aid, I think that some of us here today, adults and young people, would feel uncomfortable in some situations that came up where we would have to perform first aid. So, young people here today, I urge you to ask yourselves, would I be able to confidently stand and say I would be comfortable in a situation where I would have to perform first aid? If you agree with my argument, then please vote for one of the other topics and not the introduction of compulsory first aid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ibby and Abby. And I can see we've got lots of hands up. So I don't even have to prompt you. So this is fabulous. This is better than the council. Right, I don't know who was first there. Did you see? They didn't see. Right. Well, we'll start from this, and I'll start with Joe. We'll work along. All right.
This one's for Libby. If someone was having a cardiac arrest, when I done first aid in school, the first thing I was taught was to call, check for danger and then call the emergency services. And also, I think that's just common sense. But once you're on the phone to the ambulance service, they'll give you step-by-step guides on how to administer CPR. Also, you know how you said about the response time averaging 8 minutes? Is that overall?
Well, that was an average by St John's Ambulance.
Well, obviously category 1 cause like strokes and heart attacks would be much higher and much lower response rate. So it would also lower the risks of them dying or having serious health complications later on down the line.
Just your point about the instructions from the phone is that, you know, we have IKEA manuals, but yeah, a lot of people can't put up furniture. It's like, you better know how to do it yourself practically than to have someone else tell you how to do it. I think that in that situation, yes, you get that sort of set of instructions, but you need to have that knowledge that you've already been taught.
Got Sophie next.
Mine's a question for Abby. Is the reason why young people might feel uncomfortable administering that first aid support because they're not confident in the education they've already had, and by increasing that education, their confidence and sort of in that situation would increase and they might not feel as under pressure and be more comfortable? I do agree that it would help by educating them on first aid, but also some people obviously, even if they were educated on it, if they were ever put in a sort of situation where they had to perform first aid, do you not think that they're overwhelmed by the pressure put on them and they might just go blank on what they have to do and just totally forget about what they have to do because of the pressure put on them? I think that's a fair point, but there is more chance that someone will... I'd rather take the risk of having a 50-50 chance of someone knowing what to do and possibly being too under pressure to know what to do than just not knowing what to do at all.
And Amy next, yes.
This is just a general question, so actually no, I'll put it to Louis. What, when do you propose it to be taught? Because you just said in school, but are you thinking a separate lesson or like within PHSE or like registration or something?
Well, like I mentioned in my speech, I think it would be something that could be easily transferred into PSA lessons.
So in that case, are you asking the teachers in school already to teach it, or to get people in that are experts in what to do?
Well, St John's Ambulance, I know because that's quite a big charity to do with first aid in the UK, so it's probably the most, efficient one to use. I think they have, I know that they have free teaching resources that, teachers can use that'll take them through, so they don't need to get people from the outside in. So I think that in that way, it's sort of easier than having to get people in.
Sorry, I can't see your name there.
Emily.
Emily. Right, Emily.
This is a question for Abby. You're saying that to learn first aid they should go to Duke of Edinburgh, Guides and Scouts, but they all need a subscription fee, so they would have to pay to learn. And I know only Duke of Edinburgh is the only place where it's compulsory to learn that. So with Guides and Scouts, it's quite a low chance of you actually learning it.
I think by having like the extracurricular activities as well, even if there is a smaller chance of doing it, it's a place where they go to enjoy themselves. So rather than having it compulsory in schools where some people might feel uncomfortable learning about it for any reason, then at least it's going to be somewhere that they're enjoying, they feel a lot more comfortable. Even if there is a smaller chance of doing it, it's somewhere where they enjoy going.
Did Libby want to respond to that one as well?
Yeah, just a point of you didn't cover about subscription fees. I agree with Emily that, it is quite expensive to join these organisations, and letting some people learn first aid and let some people not, it creates an inequality, and it's like some people know how to save life and help people they love, and some people don't, but school's free, so they can just learn it at school.
Abby next.
Thanks. This is a question for Abby, which is just kind of adding to Sophie's point. So, yeah, I do agree with Sophie that surely education could make people more comfortable with first aid. And sure, I do see where you're coming from, that some people may be overwhelmed if they were actually put in the situation. So many people may be overwhelmed, but that also means many people won't be overwhelmed. There will also be people who, by knowing basic first aid, could save lives. And even if only one person benefits from first aid education, it would be worth it, because surely one person could save multiple lives. And yes, there will be some people who are overwhelmed, but the amount of people who, by getting first aid education, could save lives, surely it's worth that.
Did you want to respond there?
I do agree with that again, but obviously we do need to choose between like first aid and politics today. So obviously, since we do have a full curriculum, as I said, and I know Libby says that rather than adding it as another lesson, put it in PSA lessons, that's also what was said about politics. So we need to think what's more realistic as well, teaching politics at a younger age or first aid. And I just think politics is more of a realistic goal.
Bethany next, and I've got the young mayor, and then we've got another couple of questions.
Just a couple of things. As the closing statement was, are you comfortable? And right now I'm not comfortable possibly with first aid, but that's because I'm not trained in it. And another thing is, you said the timetable is very busy, but just before you happen to be arguing that politics should be put in the PSHE lessons, but what the argument was in there was that the curriculum was too busy. So where do you start? Like, how do you think that politics is more like it can happen easier than first aid education can?
I think by introducing first aid, I don't know if it's sort of the same as politics. Some people are interested, some people aren't. So by having first aid in lessons, you can't be sure that everyone's going to get involved and everyone's going to focus on the steps you have to take. So you can't be sure that everyone's going to be listening closely about what to do, because there are still young people, and it's the same with politics. But at least with politics you're going to get somewhere, and whereas with first aid, I don't know, I just think it's more achievable.
Can young Mayor Oscar follow?
This is a question for Libby. But I was just wondering first, when you're both talking about saving a life, I don't think that's really first aid. I think first aid's more I wouldn't say scratches and that, but it's not to the extent of saving a life. And I mean, it's a very complicated process. It's not just an hour where you can make even a few lessons where you can just teach people the ins and outs of first aid. I think it needs people who are interested, like Abby was saying. It needs people who are interested and aren't going to disrupt the lesson. Also, when you were talking about that event where someone that no one knew how to, so I think teaching kids that kind of thing, it's a bit different because I go to this lifeguard training course thing, and they teach you how to like stop someone choking, and it's hitting them on the back, and if it goes slightly wrong, you can like break their spine, which would kill them. So because you're taught to do it with full force, and if you're doing that in a school environment, I'm just not sure whether it's suitable. And last point, when you're criticising the ambulance for giving you step-by-step guides, and it's like an IKEA manual can go wrong, but that's what this curriculum you were saying was provided by St John's Ambulance. That is a step-by-step guide for teachers. And if you're talking about first aid, which I don't think it is, if you're talking about first aid being saving lives, that's if that did go wrong, like if the teachers couldn't teach that properly, because they are only teachers, you know, it could just take a life instead of saving one.
Well, I'm sure everyone agree that I'd rather have my life tried to be saved than someone not trying to save my life. So I know what you mean by that, but you know, people have to take the chance. And you know, I think CPR can save a life if someone's like had a heart attack or something. I'm sure CPR can save lives. And the thing about you having to take quite a long process to teach first aid is that, you know, we got, as Abby was saying, we got taught first aid through guides at one point, and I think it took 3 nights to teach. That's 3 hours, that's 3 PSE lessons, that's 3 weeks. And compared to politics that is constantly changing, it's a lot shorter in comparison.
Do you have something to do?
Yeah,
Sorry.
So would, like you're saying, you'd rather someone try and save a life. I personally wouldn't. I would rather than phone the ambulance and then, depending on what it was, phone the ambulance and wait for the ambulance to then professionally do it. The guides might still say that 2 hours, isn't it?
No, not the first aid course that we did only lasted half a session.
Right, yeah, so I don't know, I think even 3 nights. I've never been taught a PSE thing that's gone on for 3 lessons. And also, again, that's people who are interested. So I just don't see how it can work. And finally, it is going to be a really hard thing for a youth council to do.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I've only got time for one more question, and Abby hasn't spoken yet. Abby at the front there. And I just want, it'll have to be the final question, okay?
And this is to Libby. And what year group, like, if we did introduce it, like, would you introduce it to?
Well, I think that's all quite relative to what we decide to put into the course. I think it could be as early, so in early years, like knowledge maybe about year 6, and then as it comes into older years, it can be more practical, because even knowledge of what to do in that situation to instruct someone else is, as Abby said, you feel uncomfortable, even you instructing someone else and like demonstrating could actually help in a way. So I think younger years, probably about year 6 knowledge, and up to year 11 and 12, depending how busy timetables are.
Okay, well, like I said, we've run out of time, but thank you both, Libby and Abby. That was really, really interesting. Thank you very much. Thanks. Well, we're now going to have an electronic voting system to determine which motion is going to be taken forward to the North Tyneside Youth Council as a priority for the coming year. Alex Harrison's going to coordinate the vote. and you only have one vote, so please choose a topic that you would like to be taken forward. The result will be announced as a confirmation. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you. Using the electronic voting system to vote for the topic you want to take forward for the campaign for 2018. This following slide is simply a test to make sure everyone is familiar with the system. You will have 10 seconds to vote on my say, and you select either A, B or C. This is only a one vote, so your single vote is what will be counted. So if you'd like to begin voting now, wait for this to count down and we'll get an announcement of what will be displayed in the corner of what comes through. So we've been voted there with 1, 2 and 11. This following slide is the real vote, so please choose very wisely about what you will vote for, and the vote will commence now.
Sorry, I've got to make the announcement, and I'm just trying to get used to these varifocal glasses. I think it's a political education, is that right? Vote A by 8 votes that we're going to be taking forward. Is that right? Yes. Okay, so it's political education, vote A, that you've decided on. So that concludes tonight's proceedings. I'd like to thank you all for your participation, and I can offer my particular thanks to the six debate leads who are all offered really thoughtful and interesting arguments. It was fantastic. Thank you. It was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again everyone for coming. Found that really enjoyable and very interesting. Well done to all the debate leads as well. I know it can be very nerve-wracking getting grilled on the panels. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And I just hope that we can crack on with political education and hopefully get it into schools by next October. I'd like to thank you as well, Councillor Davies, for chairing tonight's debate and keeping us all to time. Slightly over, but it's fine. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. I really did enjoy the debate, and it's been really inspirational for me to see so many of you people. You know, you're voting for politics in school, but you're all really politically minded anyway, and I think it's fantastic that you're getting involved. And I'd just like to formally declare this meeting closed. Thank you.